What is up, guys? It's a good day because it's slasher review day, but we're not going to just review any slasher. No, no, no. We're going to review one of the big guns, Friday the 13th, Part 3, Revisited. Let's go.
Who are you? What are you doing? Hey, now cut that out right now. That's not funny.
Snoop Dogg.
Friday the 13th, Part 3 stars Dana Kimmel, Larry Zerner, and is directed by Steve Miner. What's up, guys? Welcome to Friday the 13th, Part 3, Revisited. I am super excited to be doing this. As you can probably guess, if you follow my channel, I do kind of bounce around. I'm not doing these in order, and I'm being very patient, okay? I think I've only done one or two revisiteds for Friday. I did Part 7 in honor of John Carl Buechler, who passed away a couple of years ago. Did I do any others? I'll have to go back. I called it Revisited for the first movie, but that was just an interview with Deborah Voorhees, and we talked about the psychology of Pamela Voorhees in the first movie. But I can't really call that, a tried and true revisited review. It was more of just a conversation. So I'll probably retitle that, and I will be doing a full revisited treatment on the very first movie because I love that movie. And it's interesting to me how divisive it can be. That's something that I never expected from the first movie. I thought everybody loved the first movie, but we'll get into that. Today we're going to talk about Part 3, and I'm glad we're doing that because if you remember, I think probably 10 years ago when I reviewed it for the first time, I haven't went back and watched that review. I don't go back and watch my reviews. I might give them a once over after I'm done with them just to make sure, a sanity check, make sure there's no big errors or anything like that. But I don't generally go back and watch my reviews. I cringe when I watch myself on camera, to be honest. But if I remember correctly, when I did Friday Part 3 the first time, I don't think I was that high on it. I thought it was just average and one of the lower in terms of the first 4 movies or even 6 movies. But I have watched this movie a couple of times down the line. I did a D-watch for the first 3 movies at one time. And I've had a couple of Friday marathons. I might have even did a commentary. I'm not even sure, but I have grown quite affectionate of this movie, and I didn't realize how unique it is amongst really all of the movies in the franchise. And it's in 3D. By the way, before we dive deep, I do have a 3D TV still. I have watched this movie in 3D from this exact release, from the box set that came out. I know a lot of you guys might have sold your 3D TVs. A lot of you guys don't have 3D TVs. I can brag and say I still got mine. I still got a 3D movie collection. And this is really good 3D, but I think there's 2 different types of 3D. There's 3D where it's more about the story and depth and everything. And then there's just kind of the gimmick 3D where it's just things poking out at you, right? And I tend to kind of prefer that, if I'm being honest. I'm sitting in a theater watching My Bloody Valentine 3D, and all the kills are literally like a pickaxe is literally this far from my freaking nose, and I was just so like a kid in a freaking candy store. I was loving it. So I like the fun 3D gimmick, and I do think it'll make a comeback. But just since we're on 3D, this was, I think, the first to kind of bring back the 3D craze. Yes, there was 3D in I think the 50s, but it hadn't come back in decades. And then, Paramount had the idea, hey, you know what? Let's make this fun. The previous 2 Friday movies were big hits. Let's try to bring back 3D, because what better genre to have fun with the technology than horror? And this movie really did it. And by the way, I just watched this Blu-ray again recently. It looks horrible. It really does, and I think it needs a complete wash and a cleanup of the film reel, because there are so many scenes in this movie, which I'm sure a lot of you guys have noticed, that you'll just see like specks of dirt and all kinds of stuff. It's just a nasty looking reel And I wish it did look better, but unfortunately, it just doesn't. It looks really, really bad. But of course, I do have most of the movies. I think all of the movies, thanks to Some Neat. He sent me all of them on VHS. And man, look how glossy this looked. It looks really nice. Here's the, we're going to do a laid back revisited for this. But man, I remember back in the day when I used to rent VHS tapes. I don't know how good you guys can see this because my focus on my Canon T5i is not the best. But man, that Paramount logo on VHS tapes was just to die for. But let's dive into this revisited review. And you know what? I'll start you off with a quick plot synopsis because it's pretty much the same. A group of young people are going to this. Now, this is the unique movie where they call it a camp, but it looks more like just kind of a lake with a cottage. And most of the scenes in this movie, they don't take place near water. Some of them do, and of course, one of the most iconic kills in the franchise does. So, yeah, it's still a camp slasher, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't have that camp, as far as the occupation, the camp counselor, it doesn't have like a camp counselor vibe at all. These are not really camp counselors, if I remember correctly. They're just friends. They're going to this little excursion, this little vacation in this van, and two of them are potheads, which is kind of unique. Maybe this was around the time when Cheech and Chong were really big. But also then you got Dana Kimmel playing Chris. She hasn't been back to this place because of a really bad experience. We will get into that experience because, oh boy, there's a lot to discuss with that. But then she has Debbie and her boyfriend, and Debbie happens to be pregnant. I just did my pregnancy horror, and by the way, I asked you guys if you wanted Pregnancy Horror Part 2 or this, and I think it was like 85 to 88% of you wanted the Revisited. So I think you guys are really liking the Revisiteds, or just like really, I guess, foaming at the mouth for a Friday Revisited. Maybe that's it. Maybe I will do these once a month. I'll try to stick to that, doing the Friday Revisiteds, and maybe sprinkling a Nightmare, because I did do New Nightmare Revisited not too long ago. I'm just a very in the moment type of person. You know, I get inspired by things. I feel like I need to talk about it. That's what happened with this. I didn't plan on doing a Friday Part 3 Revisited, but here we are. This whole week I've been in just like a big Friday Part 3. If you follow my socials, you'll notice that. Kind of in love with this movie right now, and it's kind of cool. But jumping back on the plot, finishing up with the characters, you have Shelley, who is an iconic character. I have come around to Shelley, actually. I remember in my first review, I didn't like Shelley at all. But after really watching this movie and really paying attention to the characters and just the way they handled themselves, or maybe it's just my age, maybe I've matured a little bit, but I really kind of root for Shelley in this movie now. I kind of like the guy. He can't help it that he looks the way he does. But like all young people, he wants to find love and maybe get lucky. And so they set up this double date with this girl, Vera, who really likes to dress in red. Her entire outfit is, if there was a Funko Pop of Vera, you would be able to spot it from a mile away. Just gonna say it, she's way out of Shelley's league. Like, they were really shooting high with this double, like, did they like do this as a joke? Did they really think that those two were going to be compatible? I don't know. But Shelley, you know, he's giving it the old college try. Now, let's talk about the end of Part 2 marrying up to this movie, because this movie does start off with kind of a, it's not even really a recap. It's just, let's show the very ending of the last movie, but let's chop off a section of that movie. And I think there's a reason they did that, because you have Jason unmasked and he's, you know, thrusting through this window at Jenny, and he looks one of the scariest images I remember from my childhood. So that scene is not in this movie. You know, you see the showdown at the shed between Jenny and Jason, and then you see the mask being pulled off, and then it just cuts to this and showing the aftermath of Jenny going crazy, which they kind of repeat that in this movie at the end. Jason just drives women crazy, I guess. So my question here is, does this movie retcon that ending where where Jason has this long hair and whatnot? Did Jason like shave his head before he enters the frame in this movie? I don't know. And they never really like behind the scenes, I never hear anybody ever talk about it. Maybe you guys might know and let me know in the comments, but yeah, they don't really mention it. And this movie does keep Jason in the shadows. And you know what? I like that. I actually like how You don't see Jason in the hockey mask until an hour in the movie. And it's almost exactly an hour when he walks on that dock, you know, and shoots Vera. And I never realized that. This last time I watched it, I tried to pay attention, like, when does Jason actually put on the hockey mask? Because we don't even see the hockey mask for a long time. And as a matter of fact, thank God for Shelley, because if not for Shelley, Jason would never have the hockey mask. And Shelley, earlier in the movie, when we're getting to know the characters, he's, you know, when we first meet him, he has this mask on that's just clear. It reminds me of the mask from Alice, Sweet Alice, if I'm being honest. What's funny too is they're like putting a music cue on there to make you think, ooh, is he a killer? Which we all, of course, know because of the situation, the lighting, all that stuff. Why would he be a killer at this point in the movie? But I guess staying on Shelley, the reasons I liked him this time around too were, I'm kind of rooting for him. There's a scene where he's going to a convenience store with Vera, and Shelley kind of saves the day, and he like runs over the bike with the biker gang, and he's kind of kicking ass. And I'm like, yes, go Shelley. That's really cool. So I have matured on Shelley for sure. Shelley sort of reminded me of what Corey Feldman was in the fourth movie too, because he's into like special effects makeup. The funny thing is, you can't distinguish between when he's actually faking and when he does eventually get killed in the movie, because the effects look the same.
Nice makeup job.
And you know what? I love practical effects. I think they're amazing, but I can usually tell the difference between, you know, real and fake, right? We're going to get more in depth with Jason, and especially Richard Brooker, who was a freaking icon. He might be one of the best looks of Jason, and he might be the scariest Jason. I think he is. This movie's just so fun to talk about. And if you wanted to like if you saw this movie for the first time, you would probably pick it apart to death, especially if you're of like a younger generation and you're not really into Friday the 13th. So you're not kind of in on the joke, I guess. At face value, this movie, it's really bad in terms of the acting, but I think it's just very self-aware. It knows what it is. It's squarely planted in the 80s firmly, which I love. But you got this biker gang, and immediately they made me think of the Black Widows from Every Which Way But Loose. Definitely showing my age there.
You see there? An arm? You don't know what this means. Do you see that? Them's Black Widows. Did you know that more people die from Black Widows than rattlers every year?
Well, listen, I sure do appreciate knowing that, because most of the people I know just step on them and squish them.
If you haven't seen Every Which Way But Loose, what are you doing with your life? But yeah, the biker gang, they're the most non-threatening biker gang I think I've ever seen on film. Really funny. They get mad because Shelley runs over the bike, and so then they want to siphon the gas, you know, out of the car. Which, you know, if you want to get revenge, that's what you're going to do? You're just going to go siphon gas out of the car? I don't know. But eventually they end up into the iconic barn scene. And one thing, this is where some of the kills really start ramping up. And one of the funny kills to me was the pitchfork, which is used a couple of times. Fox gets pitchforked, I guess, pinned to one of the rafters in the barn. And I started thinking about the logistics of that kill. Yeah, even if Jason's superhuman, which I guess he is, it takes a lot of time to do something like that. And did he like throw her and then just kind of hit her with the pitchfork? Or did he pitchfork the neck and then just lift her up, which her head would have probably ripped from her body? You can go crazy thinking about, you know, I guess the nuts and bolts of these freaking kills. They're hilarious. We're talking early 80s. This is the heyday of really fun and creative kills. And I think Friday Part 3 stands up to all of the greats, you know, including like The Prowler, which is known for great kills. Just Before Dawn, which I think is a highly underrated slasher film with really, really great kills. Debbie's Boyfriend, the guy that walks on his hands, which somebody posted in one of the horror groups, a really funny comment, like their baby would be able to walk on his hands, which is hilarious. But this movie's kind of controversial. She's pregnant for no reason whatsoever. And then she dies. And she pretty much dies the same fashion that Kevin Bacon died in the first movie. But it's in a hammock, which is kind of cool. But her boyfriend's death, to me, I think is still one of the greatest and funniest horror kills I think I've ever seen. Like, Jason gives no fucks whatsoever.
Yeah. Are you still out there?
I think Jason just likes to have fun, right? He sees a guy walking on his hands coming at him. He's probably going like this. Oh shit, yes, please. Jason must have been getting giddy under that mask. He couldn't wait to freaking split that guy right down the middle. And I think that kill has inspired a lot of current horror, like Terrifier, the split down the middle kill. I think Jason did it first, and I think he did it the best, because if you freeze frame that shot too, it still works, Usually when you freeze frame a kill, you can start kind of seeing the cracks, of the kill. Oftentimes with a kill, it's all about, maybe sometimes panning the camera. Like anytime there's like an arrow shot, they pan the camera. So it goes from point A to point B, and point B already had the arrow in their head. It's all about misdirection. But this kill, I mean, the camera stays right there on it. You got a glass with the camera under it, catching the guy walking on his hands, and his body just freaking falls upon itself. And it's bloody and it's awesome. Now let's talk about Jason in this movie and Richard Brooker. Again, you don't see him until an hour into the movie, which I think is awesome. Richard Brooker has this really signature walk. It was like a lumbering type of walk. And he's just a creepy Jason for sure. And I love like his entrance as, Jason with the hockey mask on. He sees Vera, and he's like, there's no emotion to him whatsoever. He's just like, oh, hey, how you doing? Boom, I'm just going to freaking shoot an arrow right in your freaking head. And what an entrance, and I think that's probably a big reason why we love the hockey mask so much, because it is really just kind of a blank slate, There is no emotion behind it. Later, when he takes that mask off and you see his real face, it's terrifying, which usually is the opposite when a killer wears a mask. Usually the mask is the scary part, and the killer's face is just like a normal human being. But Jason is one of the rare instances where the mask actually makes him less frightening, because that dream sequence at the end of the movie, terrifying, especially for me when I was like freaking 10 years old. Jason's kills are so freaking good in this movie. I think most of the time when people mention Jason's kills out of all the movies, there's a good chance that a couple of the ones from part 3 are going to come up. The one that scared me, like literally my very first scare that I remember that really got me, was when he squeezed the guy's head and the eyeball just pops out at the viewer. Gold standard. And they're funny. There's like a comedic nature to Jason's kills. Now let's talk about Chris, and then we'll kind of venture into the final act. I think Chris, some people say that Chris is like their favorite final girl out of the entire franchise. I think the top two are probably Jenny and Chris, and they happen to be in back-to-back movies. I think Chris is just so damn likable. There's definitely an innocence there to her, but Dana Kimmel really just gave her this gusto, this fight that she has at the end of the movie. So she can really just play both sides, right? When you first meet her, you kind of think she could probably get killed pretty easily, because she doesn't seem like, this warrior badass. That part of her comes out at the end of the movie. She goes a little crazy in the process, but, whatever you got to do to get the job done, right? This is one of my favorite final acts, because I think it's important for a final act to last a certain amount of time. I don't think a final act should be too short, and I definitely don't think it should be too long. And I think part 3, it is the exact perfect amount of time for a final act, and there's a lot of great stuff in there. I don't think it wastes any time. It's a great setting in the barn. And then you got this amazing final girl that you believe her when she's standing up to Jason, because she's smart. And she figures out his weaknesses and how to hide from him when she needs to, and how to attack him. And she is the person that put the iconic crack on the top of the mask. If you look at my masks back there, I have a couple of Jason masks. I got at least 3 that I'm looking at right now. And just about all of them have the crack, and I prefer it that way. That is part of the Jason mask. That is a signature. And, I think another thing that I like about a good final girl is that she doesn't just scream the entire time. And this is one of the big things that I've complained about, like, say, Scout Taylor Compton in Rob Zombie's Halloween. That screaming, yeah, in real life, you might be doing that. Although I think you might be trying to be quiet. I don't know. You'd scream some of the time, sure, if they're coming after you. But I think in a movie, for entertainment's sake, the audience gets that the character is scared. Show me in another way that they're scared, though, without annoying the shit out of me. Dana Kimmel does it perfectly. She doesn't scream that much, but she goes a little crazy. And in those like crazy psychotic moments, that's when the warrior really comes out, and she doesn't back down from Jason at all. And I think a lot of you guys are right. I think maybe Chris is the best final girl in the franchise. You know, it's very close between her and Jenny. And let me know in the comments which one you guys prefer. But Dana Kimmel got this job because of Sweet 16, which is a movie that I just reviewed not too long ago, actually. I didn't realize she did that movie before this. But she's really good in this one. But I think this is the best movie that Dana Kimmel has ever been in, as far as like, you know, being a satisfying character for an actor. Now, let's talk about that dream sequence, because I think that is one of the biggest and most controversial topics of the entire franchise. People have discussed that dream sequence in detail, trying to figure out what it all means. And I think it's one of the few times, if not only times in the franchise, where a character has had an altercation with Jason in the past that's never been presented on screen. But I think it's said like 2 years ago or maybe a few months ago. You know, Chris's boyfriend, I guess he lives there, and because of that incident, she left, and then the boyfriend was upset because, you know, she didn't really say goodbye. I don't know, but what happened was she was there with her parents, and she goes out to the woods, and Jason chases her. There's even been theories like Jason, like, I'm not going to say the word, but he like violated her. It doesn't really say that in the movie. It just says that he basically chases her like he would any other victim. The whole scene is kind of pointless when you get right down to it. But I think they were just trying to add some meat to the story. I don't know. But even like when you ask Dana Kimmel, you know, what she thinks of the scene and what it all means, I don't think she really even like fully grasps what they were going for with the scene. And this movie does have some weird stuff, like the big dream sequence at the end of the movie, because they didn't really want to repeat, I guess, the previous two movies, what they did. So they did shoot like an alternate ending between Chris and Jason. And I guess it didn't test well or something like that. And so they ended up reshooting what we got, which was the crazy dream sequence. And I will say, when I saw this movie as a kid, you know, there were quite a few moments that freaked me out, but that's another one when she looks up in that window and she sees Jason like staring at her with the blood on his head, and he gives her this like evil, sinister smile. Nightmare fuel, people. And then she's in the boat and they do a repeat, which I think this was a mistake. They had Pamela Voorhees, I guess, you know, her corpse come out of the water, much like Jason did in the first movie, and it just didn't have the same impact at all. That's the thing about surprise endings. You can only do them once. If you do it again, they don't really have the same impact. So I think this movie doesn't finish that strong, but I think there's just so much great stuff in part 3. I think it has the perfect balance of being really fun and really even striving for comedy with, like, say, the stoner couple and all that. But it still has some of the creepiest moments, some of the scariest moments, some of the best kills. And I think a lot of people really like the characters in this movie. You know, let me know, but as far as characters in Friday movies, I'd say 3 and 4 probably have the best characters, the best crop of characters. I think 4 is definitely the best. But I think most of these characters are pretty memorable just because of they try to capture every different archetype, older, younger, the jock, the geek. You know, it's all there. It has arguably the best Jason. I'd say besides maybe Ted White, part 4. I can't wait to jump into part 4 and do a revisit for that one. That is one of my all-time favorite slashers, if not my favorite slasher. It's just amazing. But the 3D is fun in this movie, and I do know that behind the scenes, the actors, they got frustrated because they shot maybe 5 to 10% of the day. Most of it was setting up shots for these big, clunky 3D cameras. And I can definitely understand where they're coming from because, like, when I was an extra in, like, say, Stranger Things, I've done a few different movies and TV shows for extras. And I can tell you, you wait around a lot more than you're shooting. You're actually like foaming at the mouth waiting to shoot. Not just the extras, but the actors, right? So I think that's one reason why actors are just such moody people, because the job itself is not fun. It's fun when they get to actually play and act and all that, but I'd imagine the lead up to that, because you've been waiting for so long, and I think it's like double when you're doing a new technology like 3D, and they want to get it right. And having to do shots over and over because they had to be set up a certain way. Objects had to come right at the camera, you know, otherwise they have to just do it over and over and over again. So yeah, it is frustrating. But let me just drive it home. I love Friday the 13th Part 3. I think it's easily one of the most rewatchable movies. It has one of the coolest freaking scores, you know, the opening titles by Nilbog, which that backwards is Goblin, by the way. Just really fun music. It's a fun movie overall. So this was a really fun revisited. I know it's a little all over the place, but that's kind of how I do revisited reviews. So let me know down in the comments how you feel about Friday Part 3. Is it a movie that you've kind of come around to, or have you just always loved it? You know, I know some people say it's like their favorite Friday movie, and I get that. I understand it. It's a fun freaking movie. But let me know down in the comments. For a rating, I'd definitely give this one a high purchase worthy. You know, warts and all. It's just a really fun movie. So let me know down in the comments what you guys think of Friday Part 3. Have you actually seen it in 3D? I want to know that too. Also, be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day on Fridays, review for Fridays. Follow me, Drumdums, on my socials, support me on Patreon, become a channel member, buy me a coffee. You know, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a good day, and Drumdum out.